Okay, well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you're joining. We're pleased to have you here, where we are going to walk through advanced automations and setting up workflow, streamlining things within SmartSuite. We are going to get into a specific process just to kind of have a live demo and demonstrate how things work. But this is obviously applicable to every process. I'm Avi Hersenberg. I'm the VP of Partnerships here at SmartSuite. I work with affiliate partners, solution partners, technology partners, integration partners, building that ecosystem around SmartSuite to allow users to effectively understand how to use SmartSuite, implement SmartSuite, and use their other apps together with SmartSuite. I'm joined by Nate, who is one of our onboarding specialists and has done a phenomenal job building out the spaces, which we're going to see in a moment. And Emma, who's also one of our onboarding specialists and product marketing specialists. And so in today's agenda, we just did the poll, and we are going through the intro now. And we're going to pretty soon dive into a live demo. And then we're going to show how to actually set up automations, and we're open for Q&A. I do want to say we're open for Q&A throughout the entire webinar. So if you have a question, if you want to speak up, raise your hand. If you have a quick question, you want to just throw in the chat. Emma and Peter, who's our CTO actually, will be monitoring that chat and helping us get all your questions answered. And so without further ado, I'd like to jump into explaining SmartSuite. Just give a quick 30-second high-level overview, and we're going to dive right into a live demo explaining what's going on in here. And so SmartSuite essentially is a work management platform, which is meant to help businesses in any industry manage any type of workflow or process. SmartSuite is different than any other existing product on the market. Because SmartSuite is a work management platform. So other products currently on the market, with some of you may be familiar with some of them, are going to be either focused on no-code databases and managing kind of data. Some softwares are focused on managing tasks and projects. And where SmartSuite comes in is kind of that all-encompassing platform and just a level above those platforms where you can manage any process in any industry. SmartSuite has the capabilities of understanding what is a task and what is a project versus what is data and what is process management. SmartSuite is very powerful when you come to streamlining processes, streamlining tasks and projects, as well as automating, which would be the focus of our webinar today. SmartSuite, we chose hiring and onboarding as since those are two core processes we feel like basically any business in any industry has. Hopefully you're growing and you have the need to hire and onboard. Hopefully you're not doing too much offboarding, but that sometimes is also a critical need in a business. And so since those are core processes that exist basically in any industry, we felt like we will just build out two solutions and kind of show how you can move off of whatever process you're using right now. That may be a pen and paper and just signing paper contracts and going through paper checklists and tasks, or maybe you're doing that through email, just kind of managing emails back and forth. And I don't need to tell you, but I mean, we've seen this time and time over again, many businesses, things fall through the cracks when there's no proper process and easy way to streamline things. And so we'd like to just demonstrate how things can be streamlined in SmartSuite. But again, the idea of this webinar is just to open your mind into how SmartSuite works in general and what's possible with SmartSuite. So take hiring and onboarding and offboarding as an example and apply that to whatever industry or whatever process you're trying to streamline and automate. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nate, who will dive into hiring and then get into onboarding and offboarding. Nate's going to walk us through the structure, the hierarchy, and how to use SmartSuite in general, and then how he went about automating the hiring and onboarding and offboarding process. I'm going to kind of chime in and just ask questions, and I'd love to take questions from the crowd. So please don't be shy. Join in whenever you can. Nate, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Avi. So to start, I'm now in the home page of Smart Suite. When you sign in, you'll be taken right here. And this is basically your accounts where all your solutions are going to be. Solutions right here are the biggest data pieces in Smart Suite, and they contain a bunch of apps that all are in the same business process. So for example, hiring for a webinar. So we have this hiring or recruiting solution. We have a bunch of apps, which are tabs, which are just basically tabs that contain records and fields, which I'll describe in a bit, of data that applies to this process of hiring. So we have 4 different apps here, one for positions, applicants, interviews, and interviewers. Now, when I click into one of these apps, we have records, which are rows. And in this instance, the records are positions available or positions that you have in a company that you want to include here for your hiring process. But they can be anything. That's really what differentiates us at Smart Suite, is records can be anything. They're not just tasks, like in ClickUp and some other competitors. And we have these fields, which are columns, which are customizable fields. There's over 40 of them and one for each scenario. So we'll dive in first to hiring, and then that kind of transitions into our employee onboarding and offboarding.
Nate, just a quick question over here, right? So how would you go about, what would you include in solution versus app? Like you described the hierarchy very well, which is basically solutions, apps, records, and then there's obviously views. But in general, like if someone's coming in here to manage a process, how should they think about solutions versus apps? How do they know if something belongs in a completely different solution or it just belongs in an app within that solution?
Great question. So the good thing about Smart Suite is it's extremely customizable. So you can, if you prefer to have things in certain places and have your business processes separated into multiple solutions, you can totally do that. We recommend that you have a solution for every business process, and those apps are different categories within that business process or different moving parts within that business process. So as you can see here, there's 4 different moving parts for this business process of hiring and recruiting. So we'll go ahead and walk through that now. So I'm going to start with positions. Just open up in record view. We have a bunch of fields that are adding quality data to this position. So we have this sales ops analyst. You can change the status to show if we're open for applications. You have single selects here showing what type of position it is, what department, location. You can use all of these for grouping and reporting purposes. We have this date range here, count field showing how many applicants have applied to this position. And this could be a good metric for when you send out a form to a bunch of applicants, they all submit it. You can see how many people are applying. We have some text heavy fields here with a text area and a smart doc, just including this qualitative information for the job description and responsibilities. And we have some more details down here talking about experience level, just getting really down to the nitty-gritty about what this position is all about. And we have at the bottom the link to the applicants as well.
So I guess this is basically, this app for positions is managing all the open positions that the company would technically be hiring for. How would I go?
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be positions that are closed that were open at one point and you're just having them here in case they reopen again, or you could be drafting out certain positions if you're trying to figure out what your company needs to hire. You could not have that in, like, you could not know what that exactly entails, and you could just be like formulating that here in a draft with what the responsibilities would be.
Got it. So let's say I had tons of positions open. I had my historical positions that I want to reference back to and kind of see what the job description was. But I don't want my feed to get clogged. Like I don't want to have all my closed positions. So how would I go about keeping track of all my draft positions, open positions, and closed positions, but then having a place where I can only see my open positions?
Great question. So in this view, we have open here. It's called open positions by department. And that's because we're using this reporting capabilities and filtering out all those records that the status is closed. So we're just showing the ones that status is not closed. So it's giving us basically all the open positions by department. And if you were to get rid of this, you can see we have this closed position pop up.
Got it.
And we have a bunch of view types to look at this data. This is a Kanban view, which is great for moving around and adjusting your positions. You can just drag and drop if you want to change the status. For example, if this closes, if product manager closes, you just drag it over. And we have grouped by location. So all these fields we were putting data inside of the record are used to group for the view types. We have all open positions, and then we have all positions here.
How would I go about, let's say, setting up a new view? So let's say I want to see all of my closed positions.
You go ahead and click this create new view at the dropdown,
Mhm.
and probably use grid view, but you can use other views if you like. You just create that and filter what status is closed.
So Nate, I have a question for you. In the previous views, there were so many other fields that were displayed. Right now, I'm only seeing the job title. How would I go about displaying all that other information?
You just click fields to display, and you can click, unclick, whichever fields you think are important to include in this grid view.
Got it. So I can drag and drop fields and I can choose basically. So essentially all the information is technically stored on the record. And if you click into the record, you can see all those details. But then in the different views, I can set up basically different windows to see different types of information at different times.
Exactly. And you can also make this directly in here, where you can click on these column drop downs and remove them from display, and you can just drag and drop the placement of them.
Got it. Okay.
So let's go ahead and move on to applicants. So I'll go in and jump into this data. I know we really want to focus on the workflow of hiring and get to the automation. So I'll go through this somewhat quickly.
Mhm.
Here we have an applicant. It's linked to that position that they want to apply for. We have this data about when they apply, their contact information. You can close this out because it's grouped by sections. Here's going to be the resume, where someone is going to go and look at the resume and see if they want to change their status from application received to interviewing, which we'll go to in a second. But we have the links to the interviews, and then we have this scoring system, which is being pulled from the interviews app. And it basically is taking the average of all those scores that the interviewer gave the applicant for that particular interviewer.
So essentially, this is basically managing all the applicants and tying them to the particular position. You mentioned groupings before. What are groupings and how do I set them up?
So these section headers they basically just separate the information inside of a record. So if you have a group of fields that are all similar and you want to group them by the section header, you can just go above the field you want to include the header and hit add section. And then this could say like position detail.
Got it. And I can reorder the different fields, move them in and out of groups.
Exactly. Move them around. You can move this up so that moves the whole section. Move it down. You can collapse it by default so it stays away if there's information. We probably would want to keep this interview scores away because there's a lot of information in there and you don't necessarily need to see that all the time. So you can collapse that by default.
Okay, got it. And so you said applicants are linked to positions. What does that mean, linked?
So we have a field type called the linked record, and it basically just links an app to another app. So in this case, applicants are going to be related to position, and they're also going to be related to interviews. And when you create the link between those apps, you can click into them here, and it basically just goes straight to that app and the exact record that it's linked to. So in this case, this is linked to the sales op analyst position. And you can see all that data here. Right now it's in a standard display. You can change this display by going into modify field settings and choosing your display of choice. And these other displays are going to show fields side of that positions app, and you can choose which fields included.
Got it. So essentially, so I have data in my applicants app and I have data in my positions app, and I can then start linking applicants to positions to track who applied to what position.
Exactly.
Nice.
Okay.
And so how do applicants get in here? Like, I see the applicants currently filled out, but how are applicants even in here?
Good question. So we created a form, which is a great use of a form, where you can send out posts on social media, and people can go into that form, fill it out, and their information directly gets put in here. You don't have to do anything, and it'll start with the default value of application received. So when people start filling out that application form, which I'm going to actually send it out in the chat if you guys want to.
Yeah, that would be fun. So essentially what you're saying is we can set up a form that's pulling the same fields as the grid view. So whatever information I want to track about applicants, I can basically just create a form and, let's say, include that form in the job description or wherever I'm posting on the different job boards that I'm posting, and just tell applicants that the way to apply for my job is by filling out the form. Let's go ahead and actually, so Emma, thank you for sending out that form on the chat. If any of the attendees want to go ahead and fill out that form, and you'll kind of see for yourself, as soon as you submit that form, your data will populate on Nate's screen and will automatically link you to the particular job that you applied for. So if anyone wants to go ahead and fill out that sample form, no pressure. If not, one of us can fill it out.
You don't have to use your personal information.
Yeah, just make up a big name, but if you want to see the capability of it, go ahead and fill it out. I'll walk through the views while we're waiting on that. So we have applicants by position, which is just grouping them by that linked record. You can expand and collapse the groupings to make it easier to see. We'll go ahead and move over to this active candidates by stage and rating. So this is a great view to see those formula fields that we created. And it's great for someone that's looking at the applicants in an overall view and seeing which ones are good, which ones aren't, which ones are we going to send an offer letter to, and which ones we aren't. We have another Kanban view where you can start moving people around. I think we got Sally Stu and Sue and Steve Smith from the form just now. So thank you for submitting. We have this applicants by rating, using spotlights to highlight interview scores that are good and red for bad. Another great view for someone reviewing applications. And then we just have all applications. And we also have the application form itself. So this is what you are filling out right now or filled out.
So Nate, how would someone go about, say I want to know the address of the applicant or what city they live in? How would I go about tracking that?
So you can go and create whatever field right now. So in this case, we'd use a text field for like an address, and then we can go ahead and create an address field and move that data over. We have a release next week where you can add an address field to a form. So for now, we'll use this as an address. I guess there's already an address here. But I'm just going to add this real quick. And we go to the application form and just click address, and it gets added. You can make it required. You can remove it right here. Extremely customizable.
Got it. So I can basically add any field that I'm trying to track about my applicants to the form and either require it or make it unrequired.
Exactly. And then
Okay,
you can-
nice. So let's go through like the applicants that were just submitted and kind of walk through and see what happened. So
Yeah.
we just got, which applicants came in now?
Steve Smith, great name, and Sally Sue.
How do you know that those are the applicants that came in now?
Because it says first created by, and it has a Smart Suite form as something that's
Nice.
created. And then also we have this default value of application received. And we can see the fields that were required. So the phone, the email are inputted there.
So I can see when someone applied, right?
Yes. So
And
this
that's tracked automatically. They didn't even have to fill that out.
exactly. We have this first created field that's built into every field. It is shown inside of a record.
Okay.
Right.
Now, what happens when someone submits the form? When someone basically applies to my job?
What do you mean?
So let's say I want to set up, I mean, obviously we're going to get into like the automations that we have set up over here. And so when someone submits a form and says, you know, I'm interested in the particular job, are they getting some sort of response? Like, how can I automate that process instead of me having to send out a manual email saying, hey, we got your application. Let's go ahead and schedule your interviews. Like, how can I automate that?
That's a great question. So we can go ahead and go into automations and we can create an automation to do just that. So let's actually add it right now. I'll go into the rest of automations in a little bit, but basically we can say when a form is submitted, so that application form is filled out, and we're using the application form. And let's say we want
One moment.
we want the email to be the trigger. So if they fill out an email is not empty, then we're going to add an action where we're going to send an email to that email that they filled out. There we go. And we are going to fill out the subject with whatever you'd like. And then the message being like, hey, we've received your application. We're working on reviewing it right now. You'll hear back from us in X amount of days. And then you'd add that automation right here.
Awesome. So this is really where the power of automation starts coming into play, where you can set up an automation to say when a form is submitted or when a record is created, it can trigger an email. Let's walk through the structure that you set up, because I think you set up some really cool automations that walk from the moment an applicant applied for a job all the way through the end of the interviewing process. Let's kind of show the process, and then we can talk about how those automations are working on the back end.
Gotcha. I'll jump into interviews real quick just to show what's in there. So inside of the interviews, we just have this auto-generated title, which is basically pulling the position, the applicant, and the stage. Just gives you like a very good understanding of what this record is all about. So we have this position CMO, Camilla is doing the applying, and this is the first round interview. And we have a link to the applicant this time. We're looking up the position from this applicant field. And we have the stage. And we have this first round interviewer, who is Angela. And we can look at this information here. And then we also have these evaluation fields for both qualitative and quantitative data, like collection for about that specific interview. So when someone's done interviewing, Angela, who's the interviewer, is going to come in here and basically rate this person, how they were on their background, their prior work experience, including any qualitative comments they want to add. And here are the different view types. So we have by position in applicants right here. We have an interview calendar, which basically shows the first round interviews in blue and the final interviews in yellow, and that's just done with a spotlight. And we have some more interview details. This is also great for filtering through applicants and seeing which ones are good or bad. Then we have this interviewers, which is just who on your team is doing the interviewing. Everyone's going to have their own record. You can see with the count up fields how many interviews they completed, how many are scheduled. So you can kind of see if they're going to be really busy with doing a bunch of interviewers. And then we have the interviews that they've are either scheduled or have done. So let's move into the workflow now. So we have, now that app is submitted through a form, it's going to pop up here. So we have like Steve Smith. I'll just do myself right now so I can get the emails and show you what is going on with automations. So I'll change me back to application received. And when you go ahead and review the application, you're going to check the resume and change this to interviewing once you think they're good to go for the interviewing. So you're going to go here, look at the resume. As you can see, I have an awesome resume here. And now I know I'm good to go. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go over to interviews. We have this first round interview that was just created right now that says sales manager. It's for Nate Montgomery and it's a first round interview. So I also got an email, or should have got an email. I don't want to pull up my inbox with a bunch of random stuff, but we have an email saying, I'll show you the email exactly what's sent. Right here saying, thank you for applying. You're now being considered for interviews. Your first interview is Angela. Feel free to book a time here at the Calendly. You can use Zapier to integrate Calendly with SmartSuite, which would auto-populate this interview date here, but you can just manually input it saying like, hey, it's at Friday at 9:45 a.m. And then once that interview is conducted, Angela, who's that first round interviewer, is going to come in here and start evaluating me with all these different metrics.
So Nate, I just want to pause you for a second. That's a really powerful automation. So you're saying basically anytime an applicant applies, their status is marked as application received. And then as soon as someone comes in there, reviews all the applications that were received and decides which ones are moving up to the next round of interviewing, all they have to do is just change the status. They don't have to send out any emails. They don't have to book calls on other people's calendar. All they have to do is just change the status to first interview, and then the system will automatically create an interview on the schedule, send an email out to the applicant with and first of all, customize that email with the applicant's name without having to type out that email, just automatically grabs the email, sends the email, and is sending the Calendly link from whoever the interviewer is meant to be, and simply just sets that interview up. So with one click of a button, we generated a notification email to the applicant that they should go ahead and schedule their first interview. And we created that first interview, assigned the interviewer, and we're all set with just one click.
Exactly. I'll go ahead and show the automation that I created in case you want to recreate it. In the recording, you can just pause here. But basically, when that status changes from any to is interviewing and the interviews is empty, so there's no interviews yet for that person, you're going to want to create that first interview. We're just filling the stage with first applicants with the name of that applicant record. And then we have Angela being the first round interviewer. And then we have this email that's pulling the name from the application. So you don't have to change the name. It's going to be, it'll depend on who's applying. And you just save the automation. So now that I've been reviewed, or I had my first round interview and Angela evaluated me on these metrics, she'll go ahead and complete this when she's done and save that. Now, what's happening is the next automation is going to fire that sends and schedules the next interview. And as you can see, it just fired and we have my second round interview. This time, the interviewer is Camila, not Angela, because she's the second round interviewer. And once again, you schedule the date for the interview. Once the interview happens, fill this out with all that information and then update it the next time. And then our third automation is going to fire, which sends and creates the third interview. And each time these send, like for each stage, we have the emails text changes where like we say, you now start the second round. This is your interviewer. And then we have the third round. So here we have the final round of interviews. We have Danny doing the interviewing. And same process. You can just close it off and say complete. Now, when Danny does
Nate,
that,
I just want to pause you there for a moment to just break down what just happened. So instead of the HR manager having to constantly coordinate everyone's schedules and check in that the first interview was done and move it on to the second interview and so on and so forth, what you're saying is basically as soon as that first interview was conducted, the interviewing manager simply all they have to do is say the interview was complete, and automatically a new interview gets scheduled with the next hiring manager. And then as soon as that one, and that just all happens with one click because we have those automations running in the background. Is that correct?
exactly. And that email is sent out to the applicant too, saying you've qualified for the next round of interviews. Book a time here. So very little work is needed to be done on the team side. And yeah, when that status changes, it just sends those out. So it makes it very easy.
Got
Now,
it.
when you're done with those, however many stages of applications or interviews you want, you'd likely go over here and you could change this to pending decision, and you could create another automation here. A good idea would be to say, if there's like 1 or 2 people on your team that are looking at all the applications and all this data about which interviews are good, which ones are bad, and they make the final decision, you can say when you change the status to pending decision, send them an email saying, look at this application, please. Or you can use the comments, which we have right in here, saying at whoever in your team, we'll at Avi, or I'll do Emma. You can assign this to them and say, please look at this applicant. And it
So
will.
this is, yeah, I just want to chime in here. So this is really powerful because Emma would basically get a notification on this record in her notification center, and she can pull up those notifications right from her notification center. So you don't have to type out a whole message saying, should we hire Nate or not? All you got to do is type in and mention them, and that comment is linked to this record. So it's really easy to pull it up quickly.
Exactly. So Emma would see that in her notification center. You'd see it in the at mentioned and assigned to me. And then she'd also see it in her My Work. So the My Work is a page that basically pulls all your tasks that are associated with the status into this page here, and you can see them throughout your whole workspace. You can see open, overdue, upcoming assignments, and then also closed assignments. You can create tasks right in here too, just by clicking the new task button.
That's really cool. So this My Work, this just centralizes basically all the tasks from across the entire platform.
Exactly. It's like a built-in task manager. Some people, right when they log into SmartSuite, come here and just knock out all the tasks that they have to do for the day. Some people prefer going into the app and actually looking at the tasks here. It's really up to preference.
That's really neat. And so what happens when all 3 interviews were conducted and now the decision maker, time for the hiring manager to make a decision on should the applicant be hired or not?
So right now I told Emma to go look at this applicant, and she can come in here, look at these different views where we have like applicants by rating. We can see like Angela's a great candidate. Jane's a great candidate. They have very high interview scores. Nate, not so much. We'll go back there. Nate, not so much right here. So you can either make a decision to decline them. Where am I? I'm right here.
Nate, walk me through for a moment how you're using that spotlight view. So you're pulling in here basically why is this list much shorter than the other lists? Like how did you get to a short list of basically, I guess, everyone who's ready to interview, or what are you doing here?
Here is just showing every single applicant, and it's just spotlighting the ones that have an average interview score of greater than 45, and then putting in red ones that are lower than 25. So you can set this to be whatever you like. Let's say if you create those fields that are evaluating the performance of an interviewer, and you want the minimum score to be like 47, you can just change that in here by adding a spotlight and just changing that.
That's really cool. Okay, so then what happens at this point when I'm ready to hire someone? What do I do? Well, first of all, can I hire them from that view, or do I have to switch views?
You can
How would I change the status from that view?
from this view. So right now, the status field is not displayed. So you could go by adding the status and clicking on it, and it will show up here, or you can just click into the person you want to see and then changing it like this.
Got it. So just that simple. Let's add the status in that view and show how simple it is to just add the status.
So Angela, we would make an offer for her right here because she has great interviewing compilation. And we can go back in the other view too. And we can change mine to not making offer or making offer. And we don't have an automation set up on this make offer, but it would be great to set up an automation, which I can do right now, that moves them, or that first sends them an offer letter and then also moves them into the onboarding process, which we're going to get into right now. So moving over to this onboarding process, we have employees that are being onboarded here. And I created a form as well. If you want to send that in the chat, Emma, the form link, you can go ahead and fill it out just to play around with some demo data and show that forms are working, and it puts the data right in here. So
Nate, how would I automate an email? Let's say once I'm ready to hire an applicant in the hiring process, I want to just have an automatic email that says, hey, we're ready to make you an offer. Please fill out this form so HR can send you your offer letter.
So you definitely want to copy the form link just by going into form, share form, and then clicking this link. It's now copied. You come back to this, where you want to create the automation, this solution, because the status is being changed in the solution, and you're going to go add automation when a record's updated, and we change the status from we did changes from any to we want is made offer or make offer. So when you change that status to make offer, we want to add this action of sending an email to the email field of the applicant. So it's pulling their email. And we can say, congrats, you have received an offer. And we can go ahead and put this link to the form and say, fill this out if you have, or if you accept.
So Nate, let's say I wanted to personalize this email and use their name and say like, hey, and use their name, but every time it's a different applicant. So how would I set up an automation that would customize this email and be personable with them?
So you just go into this message setting, click this plus button over here, which is basically going to use the data from inside this solution and use it in this action. So we want to include probably hi and then the name of the person. So the applicants or the name. Here we go. And now it's going to say hi, whatever the name of the applicant is, and it's going to be sent to their email.
So anytime this automation fires on a certain record, it just pulls that record's email and name basically.
Exactly. And you can include like when they applied, any other fields you want to include here.
Got it.
And you would just add the automation, and you can include sense to update an offer letter with sense. And we can now we can now get that form going. So I think it was sent out in the chat. Thank you for sending it. We'll now go over here and look and see. So we have this Kanban view of onboarding queue, which is just the status of every single new employee that's being onboarded. If we go ahead and look inside the record, we have a bunch of custom fields that relate to onboarding. So like their personal information, this can feed into your employee directory, or this onboarding could be your employee directory. We also have the employee directory directly in SmartSuite or member directory. We can see all that information. And inside of here, we have an onboarding checklist. And in this checklist, we created a bunch of default values that every single one of, or anyone that's being onboarded has to go through. And you can create new values directly in here. So for every single new record created or every form that's submitted by someone that accepted an offer letter, a checklist is going to be filled with those steps. And you can go ahead and assign person and a due date if you want to break this up, and that will go ahead and show in your My Work as well. We also can have links to resources to review. So we have another app that's related to onboarding. That's literally just a bunch of resources that anyone onboarding is going to need to know or have. So we have things like technology setup guide and HR handbook that we're going to want to link to these people to know that we should send it to them. We have different views where you can see onboardings by the team. We have an onboarding calendar to see who's going through the onboarding process at what time. You can go ahead and drag and drop if you want to change the time, move it back. You can expand it to extend it. You can group these by things like birthday, which is something random, or you can do it by role. And when you go to other views, we can see like all of the onboardings that have been completed. So this is using that filter where the status is complete. And it's only showing you people that have gone through the onboarding process successfully. And then we have this employee offboarding. So when someone wants to leave, you can create a record in here, and you can create an automation to move this data over to automation. You can like have a yes, no field. And when you check it, it moves them over, creates a record with the information copied from here into here. We're spending a lot of time here, so I won't dive into that, but if anyone has any questions or if they want me to set it up in the Q&A, I'd be happy to do that as well. So we have some more information about why they're leaving. Maybe you want to like figure out what's going on with your employee turnover. This is basically gonna act as a log for every single person that's offboarded in your company. And this will be a running log, so you can go back to it, see what people have left, for what reasons. And we have this default value checklist that's basically created for every single new record that's created here. And this makes sure that you're not missing any step, like removing their system access or getting back all your company assets, because that can be really important. And once again, you can assign these to people, and you can also assign a due date. And that's basically the workflow. Avi, anything else? Or should we
That's really awesome. So, I mean, in summary, this basically shows how, again, like how you can automate any process. So obviously over here, we spoke about hiring and onboarding and offboarding. But as you can imagine, think about, let's say you have a CRM and you're collecting leads. And so you may want to set up a SmartSuite form, and you'll include that form on your website or wherever you're collecting leads. And then you set up automations that say, anytime a lead fills out the form, send out a nice welcome email or a nice customized email using their name from what they filled out in the form, send it out to the email address. And then you can start a whole automating process of moving them through the queue. As you saw over here, extremely powerful, where if any of you are used to hiring people and kind of coordinating and running around in circles, coordinating everyone's schedule, figuring out who's going to be the interviewer for each candidate, trying to keep track of all the candidates and copy pasting data from different spreadsheets and following up in emails and who did I get back to and who did I not. As you can imagine, in a simple process like this, everything is just taken care of, streamlined, and you have nothing to worry about. So really powerful. And this just is a little glimpse, obviously, to the power of SmartSuite and how you can start working smarter, not harder. I guess we'll open up the floor for questions. If anyone has any questions, if anyone wants to speak up, please feel free to raise your hand and we can bring you up. We'll wait and see if anyone has any specific questions.
If not, Avi, Emma, and I are just going to hang around for a little bit, probably till the end of the hour. And you can it'll be like office hours where you can just ask us anything about your specific workspace. If you're trying to implement something similar to this and have any questions, just feel free to ask and we're here to help.
Okay, awesome.
You can end that recording, Emma, too.
Okay. Anyone? Looks like we have a shy crowd here today.